If you love Jesus, write on the comments, I do. One of the most extraordinary miracles attributed to Jesus is his walking on water. After feeding a multitude with 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus sent his disciples ahead of him in a boat while he went up on a mountainside to pray. As evening fell, a storm arose on the Sea of Galilee, tossing the disciples' boat about in the waves. In the midst of the storm, Jesus came to his disciples, walking on the water. Initially, they were terrified, mistaking him for a ghost. But Jesus reassured them, saying, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Peter, impulsive as ever, asked Jesus to command him to come to him on the water. Jesus granted Peter's request, and he stepped out of the boat and began walking on the water towards Jesus. However, as Peter noticed the strength of the wind, he became afraid and began to sink. He cried out to Jesus, who immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying, "You have little faith, why did you doubt?" When they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and the disciples worshipped Jesus, declaring him to be the Son of God. This miraculous event not only demonstrated Jesus' authority over the forces of nature, but also revealed his willingness to rescue those who call upon him in faith. It taught his disciples, and us today, that with faith in Jesus, even the fiercest storms of life can be overcome. In the Gospel of John, Jesus declares himself as the bread of life. After miraculously feeding the multitude with 5 loaves and 2 fish, the crowd sought Jesus, not just for more physical food, but to understand the deeper meaning behind his miraculous signs. Jesus tells them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." He explains that just as their ancestors ate manna in the wilderness and still died, he offers a bread that gives eternal life. This bread is his flesh, which he will give for the life of the world. This teaching initially confuses many of his listeners, who question how Jesus can give them his flesh to eat. Jesus clarifies that he is speaking spiritually, emphasizing the importance of faith and belief in him. He reinforces this by stating, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day." This declaration lays the foundation for the Eucharist, a central sacrament in Christian faith, where believers partake in the bread and wine as symbols of Jesus' body and blood, received by faith for spiritual nourishment and eternal life. Jesus, as the bread of life, signifies his essential role in providing spiritual sustenance and eternal salvation to all who come to him in faith, promising fulfillment and everlasting life to those who believe in him. Jesus often encountered conflicts with religious leaders over traditional customs and interpretations of the law during his ministry. One significant example is found in Mark 7:123 and Matthew 15:120, where Pharisees and scribes criticized Jesus and his disciples for not following the tradition of ceremonial hand-washing before eating. Jesus responded by condemning their emphasis on external rituals while neglecting the matters of the heart and true righteousness. He quoted Isaiah, saying, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Jesus used this occasion to teach his followers that it's not what goes into the body from the outside that defiles a person, but rather what comes out of their hearts: evil thoughts, immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. He emphasized that these are what defile a person, and urged his listeners to focus on purifying their hearts and intentions, rather than adhering strictly to old customs and traditions. This encounter with the Pharisees and scribes underscores Jesus' message of spiritual renewal and the importance of genuine devotion to God over legalistic adherence to religious rituals. It challenges us today to examine our own hearts and motivations in our relationship with God and others.